Hello, Barrie here from Best China Info. There's something very important I feel like I need to talk about and further publicize. And that is, I read an article very recently by a very perspicacious writer, journalist, named Marcus Rubinstein, who writes for an independent news channel called APAC. So the title of this article by Marcus is this: ASPI's influence over university grants. The Australian Research Council launches an investigation into Australian academics based solely on US government-funded research by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. So I'm going to give you some background first. The Australian Research Council, you have this name, ARC, you have the ASPI, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, who are funded heavily by the US government, the UK government, and a plethora of arms manufacturers and arms weapons corporations. So this should tell you everything you need to know about the ASPI. They are pretty much told what to say and what to research in order to promote a certain message, in order to spin. In terms of the narrative that is being propagated, that is to say, the propaganda that is being pushed here by the ASPI as funded, completely funded by the US government, is also being propagated. This narrative is being fed to the world media, to the world at large, by not just the ASPI and the weapons manufacturers that fund them and the US government, but also the UK government and, of course, the Australian government and the Australian Ministry of Defence. A few days ago, the outgoing US Secretary of State, Pompeo, issued another of his ridiculous promulgations, which was something along the lines of China polluting the well of education in America. This was the phrase he used, that China is polluting the well. Now, this ties in quite directly, and it's quite transparent to see that the narrative is being pushed and where the narrative is coming from. The US government fund the ASPI. Pompeo says China is poisoning the well. We have other players in this propaganda because this is actually an inter-governmental alliance to demonize China. And one of the other players in this is something called the IPAC, the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. What they actually mean is against China. And if you have a look at their website, I will provide links as we go through this video, and we'll provide links that you can look at for yourself after the video on the page, on the YouTube page. Now, the IPAC are actually, they are against China. They are there to stop China. This is the stance they take. Now, very recently, members of the IPAC issued various statements and tweets, said words to the effect of, "We have found leaked documents which prove that China is infiltrating the Western world, and they want to destroy our way of life." The way of life they are talking about is the way of being a robber baron scumbag and stealing from everybody else. So what they actually mean is that China's rise will put an end to this. So this is what they are railing against, is the fact that their way of life is indeed coming to an end. That is the way of life of the robber baron scumbag. So you have people like Ian Duncan Smith, who has always been a completely ineffectual and impotent person as far as anybody is concerned, and now he is issuing this statement about China wanting to end our way of life. The Daily Mail, the IPAC, are quoting And this is the level, you know, we're down here, really. The IPAC are quoting the Daily Mail and these so-called leaked documents. The leaked documents aren't leaked at all. It's publicly available information. I'll name another player in this conspiracy, because it is in fact a conspiracy. And the other player is something that call themselves the Henry Jackson Society, one of whose founder members left not so long ago because he said this has become a far-right organization that actually has no meaning. The Henry Jackson Society is closely tied to members of the IPAC. The IPAC are representative of various governments around the world who are part of this alliance. They call it, it's a conspiracy to demonize China. There is an inter-governmental conspiracy to coordinate a very concerted, and I'm going to put this in very simple terms, a McCarthyist, if you want to say that, a McCarthyite witch hunt against Chinese-born academics and Chinese-born professionals in various countries, such as the US, Australia, the UK. They want to paint perfectly innocent and hardworking people as infiltrators of Western society, as enemies of the state. The ASPI have already had to publish an apology for exposing unfairly and completely without any justification one such Chinese-born academic and who's been pilloried across Australian media. Now, this is a witch hunt. Let's be under no mistake about this. This is a witch hunt against Chinese people, which actually, let's put it in even clearer terms, this is a racist witch hunt because it is against Chinese people. As far as I'm aware, the world is pretty much globalized and there are people of all nations working in pretty much every country. Are they being witch hunted like Chinese people are? No, they are not. So we are talking about a concerted Western-backed witch hunt against Chinese people. There was in Australia a Senate inquiry into this. This Senate inquiry was told that there were no concerns raised by any government department about these academics who had been accused, who had had the witch hunt finger pointed at them. This was in October. The Australian Research Council admitted that they had relied solely on ASPI research. And their CEO, Professor Sue Thomas, admitted that she had confirmed that a letter had been sent to universities demanding investigation based on this research. Under questioning from the Labour Senator Kim Carr, she admitted that the group of 8 top Australian research universities had expressed serious misgivings about the accuracy of ASP information. When asked specifically about those concerns, Professor Thomas stated, universities feel it, the ASPI, is not a good source of information. Senator Carr pointed out, and I quote, there have been occasions when the Institute actually got the wrong university. They got the wrong person. And they got the wrong country. So much for satellite analysis, hey guys. Under further questioning, the ARC chief, when asked if any of the academics, the Chinese-born academics in Australia, had breached any of the security controls as laid out by the Australian government, she replied, 0 that I am aware of. That is to say, no. Carr then put it to the ARC. So someone puts some scurrilous, spurious information in a Murdoch rag, and you decide after that that you are now going to run this, and I quote, jihad against some of our most prominent and respected scholars. Linda Reynolds, who is the Minister for defense for Australia. And as Mark has highlighted, she has just recently paid the ASPI $30,000 to speak at a conference. And here we're getting to the crux of the issue. You have the ASPI, the IPAC government, the UK government, you have the US government, and they are all involved in a money go-round. There has to be an enemy. The enemy today is China, and therefore we have an enemy, so we must have defense. And so we are defended by who? People who make weapons. Now the armament companies and the US government are funding the ASPI. The ASPI's spurious and concocted information is fed to the mainstream media. And guess who's paying for this? The Australian taxpayer, the UK taxpayer, the US taxpayer are paying for this defense against an imaginary enemy. China is not your enemy. I have no axe to grind against Australia. My connections with Australia run far back and are very deep. I have deep family connections with Australia. I'm not particularly against America or the UK. I'm from the UK. I was born there. And no one's paying me to do this. But what I am against is the world being held to ransom against an imaginary enemy, while good money is thrown after bad money to produce weapons that are not actually needed. And this is what I am against. So, again, thank you for listening. And there are links at the end of this article and links through the article. And go and read for yourselves. You can see there is a concerted witch hunt against Chinese people. This is a racist witch hunt. Thanks. Bye.